Hey y'all, and welcome back to my channel. In this tutorial we are going to make another rolling pin. This one is another holiday. I feel like it's more geared toward Christmas, but of course you can use it for Christmas or Thanksgiving just because of the color scheme that we have going on. But I am going to grab my handy adapter for the rolling pin from Kami Page Boutique. And the first thing that you want to do, this is probably one of the most important steps, is tape off your handles. You're going to want to do that if you're spray painting to begin with. But the main reason that we are going to tape off our handles here is to avoid the adapter scratching the handles from putting pressure on it and moving it around while it is in the attachment. Pop those pins in once you have it closed the clasp, and instead of using the epoxy method this time, we're going to be using glitter glue. Glitter glue is from Artistry or Colorflex Pigments, and it goes on obviously real nice and smooth. I am using a all over makeup brush. We'll be using Nude from PDB Creative Studio, which is a very fine gold glitter. So we want to get this glue as smooth as possible, and this makeup brush is definitely going to help us do that. Once I have all of my glue on, I'm going to go directly in with my glitter. Now, I sort of wanted just to sparkle up the wood grain. I knew that you would be able to see through just a little bit. If you really wanted this glitter to be bright, then you can definitely go in with either a white or a bright cream or gold base. This is a extra fine glitter, so there's no need to roll this in parchment paper or notebook paper to get it to lay flat. I'm just going to knock off all of that excess and set this to the side to allow it to dry, and then give it 2 coats of epoxy, sanding in between that first and second coat so we have a nice smooth surface for our decals. We are using some sweet Christmas clip art and some Christmas line art SVGs from my favorite go-to place for my images, Creative Fabrica. I am going to upload those into my design space, and then we're going to create a shape, the exact dimensions of our rolling pin, so that we can lay these out and create a stencil for our peekaboo. Now, in my past tutorials that I have used Creative Fabrica for my designs, I have talked about the sign up for just $1 for your first month, and you have unlimited downloads, and then the subscription would renew at $19. Well, they have since changed that and made it even better, because now the trial is 100% free. When you sign up for Creative Fabrica using the link that I have down below in the description, you either get 10 free downloads of anything that they have on their platform, which is millions of things to choose from, or 1 full month, whatever comes first. Once you have used up your 10 free downloads or that full month, then it renews at $9 instead of $19. So those first free 10 downloads or a month, whatever comes first, and then $9 a month forever after that. And if you use a lot of download files, or especially like the florals that I use in my tutorials a lot, sometimes those can be anywhere from, I would say, an average is $4 to I have paid as much as $18 for one of those bundles. So even after your trial ends, you are still saving a tremendous amount of money, because one single download can be worth more than your monthly subscription. So it is a huge money saver. I mean, I still do use Etsy for some things. Sometimes there are specifics that I'm needing that I do have to go there for, but I mean, y'all have saw my tutorials. I mainly go to Creative Fabrica for fonts, backdrops. They even have overlays for photographers. The PNG and SVG files, all of those mainly come from Creative Fabrica. So definitely check that out. Browse their website if you're not really sure, or if you are not really fond of subscriptions, just check it out. I promise that you are going to love it, and I love this new deal that they have come out with. Okay, so I sort of talked through that last one. I have showed y'all how to make a stencil so many times. If you want a detailed description on how to make the rolling pin stencil, check out my last tutorial. Just scroll down in my videos and you will find it there, and I do go through very detailed on how I created my stencils for both of my prior rolling pins. Now, while we are in Design Space, I'm going to go ahead and create the layout for our print to cut feature. We are going to be using the Buttercraft printable vinyl for these images. It is my absolute favorite printable vinyl. It's thin, it goes through the printer really easy, and it cuts so smooth, especially when you're using a newer sharp blade on your Cricut machine. So I'm just going to go and just lay these out. Same thing as our stencil, we created a shape the same dimensions as our rolling pin. And don't forget, keep them away from the left and right edges so they don't hang over the side of your rolling pin. That makes it look nice and smooth. And then the ones that are on the top and bottom is where our seam is going to meet. So anything that you have hanging over the bottom, make sure you duplicate that, place it at the top so that whenever you wrap this around your tumbler or rolling pin, whatever you're working on, it will have a perfect seam. We are going to remove those at the top and leave the ones at the bottom. We're just using the one at the top as a guide so that we can place the other images around it. So I got to this space that I wanted to put another one of these little florals in, but it was too big and I did not want to make this really small. So I brought the floral down, created an oval shape. I right-clicked on that little leaf image and brought that to the front, resized the shape until it was covering the portion that I needed to use, highlighted both of them and selected slice. I deleted the extras that I didn't need, and that removed some of that image and cropped it out so that it fit perfect in that space that I needed. Once you have everything laid out, don't forget to remove the extras that you placed at the top for your seam. And then this time we're going to remove the back. Instead of placing these by hand, I was going to try to use transfer tape. So I'm going to highlight half of these since we can only do print to cut at 9.25 by 6.75. So I split those up and attached them together so they would cut all on one sheet. I used removable vinyl for our stencil so it will easily remove from our rolling pin after we have spray painted. I'm just going to remove this from the back first. I will put it back on, but it makes it a lot easier to roll on or place onto your tumbler or rolling pin, whatever project you may be working on. If you first remove the backing, get that vinyl sort of detached from it and then place the backing back on. And I didn't do this any special way. I actually put it on the wrong way. There's not a very big difference between the length and width of this, so I think every rolling pin I have made, I have actually put them on incorrectly. But once I make it to the seam, I'll just remove one of those little stencils, place it back on in an area that it fits, and trim one of the other ones off so it's not overlapping right there at the seam. After all of your stencils are on, make sure that they are pressed down really well. If you have any bits that are poking up or crinkled, you can take your craft knife, slice right down the center of that crinkle, and then lay it flat. Or you can actually take your heat gun, heat it up just slightly, and then press it down. The heat from the heat gun will help sort of stretch it or make it more flexible so that you can press it down and work out any of those kinks. So before we spray paint, we want to make sure that we're protecting the ends of our rolling pin. I'm going to take some painter's tape, go over the edge, and then I will use my craft knife once again to trim around the edge of the rolling pin. Be really careful when doing this. It's sort of an awkward angle. Just use a newer sharp blade so that it slices through the painter's tape really well. And once you get a little spot started, you can hold your blade flush with the rolling pin and it will help you cut around that side a lot easier. I didn't show the other side, but once you have this side done, just repeat the same steps on the other side. Make sure that both of your handles are completely taped off so you do not get any paint on either of your handles. And then I used Rust-Oleum Sage Green to spray paint. I did one very light coat, allowed it to dry just a little bit, and then did a second very light coat. With a glossy spray paint, sometimes it tends to pull or kind of like puddle up in areas. So I usually do very thin coats when I'm using a glossy spray paint and do 2 to 3 coats. The attachment or adapter from Kami Page Boutique for the rolling pins is actually freestanding. So I grabbed my attachments and just sat the rolling pin down inside of them. I didn't lock it or anything, just so the rolling pin could dry and be on a flat surface. And then once that dried, I used my weeding pen and picked out all of those stencils. Once all of the stencils has been removed, you do not have to add on a coat of epoxy. You can put your printed vinyl directly on top of the spray paint. This is super, super important. You do not want to put transfer tape directly on top of your printed vinyl until you have took a lot of the stickiness off of it. I have put this on the wall, on my pants leg, like anything. I think I actually ended up putting it on a towel, like a microfiber towel, so it would pick up some of those little fibers and take a lot of that stickiness away. These are barely hanging on to this transfer tape. If you use transfer tape that has really much stickiness to it at all, then it will remove some of the printed area from your vinyl. And once you have them in place, I really didn't rub them down so the transfer tape wouldn't adhere to it in any areas. And then I removed it very slowly. Once I had all of my images placed on, then I went back and made sure that they were pressed down really well before sealing them and moving into epoxy. I always get a lot of questions regarding sealing the printable vinyl. I have seen tons of people say that they do not seal, but no matter what, if I put epoxy directly on my printed vinyl without sealing it, I will get micro bubbles. These micro bubbles might be super hard to see, but I look at all of my items that I finished before I sell them with a fine-tooth comb, and if there are tons of micro bubbles that I can see under a flashlight or sunlight, it will drive me insane. I do not like micro bubbles. So you want to seal these in with either a matte clear coat, or you can use the quick seal from Artistry Epoxy. I have also received some questions regarding getting the epoxy level on these rolling pins. Since it's sort of an awkward thing to work with and you do have it on the attachment, one of the things is to make sure that you do have those handles taped off and take the tape all the way up to the side of your rolling pin so that it don't free spin while it is on your turner. Another thing is, as you can see here, I am doing a mega thin coat. This is probably about 12 milliliters of epoxy on this entire rolling pin that is almost the same size as a 32-ounce tumbler. So doing both of those things will help you get very even coats, and it will not allow the rolling pin to free spin while it's on your tumbler, and your epoxy can self-level. I did add some filter from Colorflex in this coat of epoxy, and then we're going to go in with tinsel and sprinkle that in those blank areas that just need a little extra something. I tried to avoid getting this on top of any of my decals. You can put this in your coat of epoxy prior to adding on the decals, but I just choose to do it this way so it helps eliminate multiple coats of epoxy. Once I have all of this on, I just went back through, and you can take either some tweezers or a weeding pen and pull those little chunky pieces off of your images and just move them around into the places that you like. I did run over once again with my torch just to pop any micro bubbles if I had got any by moving these around. Since we did put this in wet epoxy and kind of drag them around on here, they do have a very like micro thin coat of epoxy on them. So I just made sure they were super flat and flush with the rolling pin. So all I had to do was go in with another thin coat of epoxy for my final coat, and this was complete. I really love how this one turned out. This definitely tops the cake. At least I feel that way because sage is one of my favorite colors over the last two rolling pins that I have made. Using a fine glitter for the Peekaboo really sort of toned that down a little bit and allowed those images to really pop off of this rolling pin, but still while giving that sparkle and those peekaboos. All of the materials that I have used will be listed down below in the description, as well as all of those creative Fabrica details that I told you about earlier in the tutorial. and all of their Black Friday deals that they have going on. So be sure to check that out if you're catching this before Black Friday of 2022. That is all for today. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next time.